Dylan Sterling didn't just want to end his marriage, he wanted to erase it. He looked at the woman who had washed his shirts and cooked his meals for 5 years, a woman he believed was a penniless orphan he'd saved from the streets, and he laughed in her face. He had the high-powered job, the luxury townhouse, and the younger, wealthier mistress waiting in the car outside. He thought he held all the cards, but Dylan made one fatal calculation. He mistook silence for weakness and modesty for poverty. He didn't know that the signature on those divorce papers didn't just end a marriage, it declared war on one of the most powerful royal bloodlines in Europe. This is the story of how a man threw away a queen to chase a pawn. The envelope on the mahogany coffee table was thick, creamy, and unmistakably legal. It sat exactly where a vase of roses should have been. It was October 14th, their 5th wedding anniversary. Genevieve Sterling stood in the center of the living room, her hand still damp from washing the dishes from a dinner Dylan hadn't come home to eat. At 32, Genevieve, Jen, to the few friends she was allowed to have, possessed a quiet, unassuming beauty that Dylan had once called refreshing and now called plain. She wore a faded grey cardigan and jeans that had seen better days. To the outside world, and specifically to her husband, she was the quintessential charity case, a waitress he had met in a diner, swept off her feet, and installed in his Kensington townhouse to manage his domestic life while he conquered the legal world. The front door clicked open. The sound of expensive leather shoes on the hardwood floor followed. Dylan Sterling walked in, bringing a gust of cold London rain and the scent of expensive scotch with him. He was a handsome man, in the way a shark is handsome, sleek, sharp, and constantly moving. He didn't look at Genevieve. He walked straight to the liquor cabinet, poured himself a drink, and then turned, leaning against the sideboard with a look of bored irritation. "You've seen it, then?" Dylan asked, gesturing vaguely at the table with his glass. Genevieve looked at the envelope. She didn't need to open it to know what it was. The atmosphere in the house had been curdling for months. The late nights, the new passcodes on his phone, the way he flinched when she touched his shoulder. "Happy anniversary, Dylan," she said softly. Her voice was steady, composed, a contrast to the storm brewing in Dylan's eyes. Dylan let out a short, cruel laugh. "God, you're pathetic. Even now, no screaming? No throwing things? Just happy anniversary." He took a sip of his drink, grimacing. "This is exactly why we're done, General. You have no fire, no ambition. You're just background noise. Beige paint on a wall." "Is that what the papers say?" Genevieve asked, finally reaching out to touch the envelope. "Irreconcilable differences due to lack of fire?" "They say whatever my partners drafted them to say," Dylan snapped, setting his glass down hard. "The point is, it's over. I've outgrown you, General. It's a fact of life. Stocks rise, stocks fall. You were a good investment when I was a junior associate and needed a housekeeper who wouldn't ask questions. But I'm a senior partner now. I need a wife who fits the part. Someone who can host a gala, not someone who looks like she should be serving the hors d'oeuvres." The insult hung in the air, heavy and toxic. Genevieve didn't flinch. She had heard variations of this for years. "You're lucky I picked you. You'd be nothing without me. You have no family, no money, no history." "Is she waiting outside?" Genevieve asked. Dylan blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "Who?" "Camilla," Genevieve said. "Camilla Vane, the daughter of your firm's biggest client. The one who wears too much Shalimar and thinks loud laughter is a substitute for personality." Dylan's face reddened. "Leave Camilla out of this. She's twice the woman you are. She comes from a real family. General. She has pedigree, connections. When I walk into a room with her, people look. When I walk in with you, they ask me for a drink refill." He pushed off the sideboard and stalked toward her, towering over her slight frame. He expected her to cower. He wanted her to cry, to beg, to validate his power. But Genevieve just watched him with eyes that were a startling, icy shade of violet, a genetic quirk he had always found unsettling. "Sign the papers, Jen," Dylan commanded. "The terms are generous. I'm giving you £10,000 and a month to find a new place. Considering you came into this marriage with a backpack and a sob story about dead parents, that's a winning lottery ticket." 10,000, Genevieve repeated. "And the house?" "The house?" Dylan scoffed incredulously. "My house? The house I pay the mortgage on? The house I renovated?" "Don't be delusional. You get the cash, you keep your jewelry, though God knows that cheap locket you wear isn't worth melting down, and you get out. Tonight." "Tonight?" Genevieve raised an eyebrow. "It's raining, Dylan. And it's our anniversary." "Sentimental claptrap," Dylan spat. "Camilla is moving in tomorrow morning. She has decorators coming at 9. I want your clutter gone. I want the smell of your cheap soap gone. I want a fresh start." Genevieve looked down at the divorce papers. She picked up the pen lying next to them. Dylan smirked, sensing victory. He watched as she flipped to the signature page. But she didn't sign. She wrote something in the margins, her handwriting elegant, flowing, and surprisingly authoritative. Then she closed the folder. "I will leave, Dylan," Genevieve said, her voice dropping an octave, taking on a timbre he had never heard before, cold, resonant, almost metallic. "Not because you are forcing me, but because I am finally finished with my experiment." "Experiment?" Dylan frowned. "What are you babbling about?" "You wanted a wife who fits the part," she said, looking him dead in the eye. "You wanted pedigree. You wanted someone the world looks at." She placed the folder gently back on the table. "Be very careful what you wish for, Dylan. The world is full of things that shine, but very few of them are gold. Just get out," Dylan growled, pointing at the door. "Take your trash and go." Genevieve nodded slowly. She turned and walked towards the stairs, her spine straight as a steel rod. "I'll pack a bag. I won't be long." As she ascended the stairs, Dylan pulled out his phone and texted Camilla. "Done. She's leaving. Champagne in 10. He thought he had won. He had no idea he had just evicted his only shield against a world he didn't understand. The bedroom they had shared was already feeling alien to Genevieve. As she pulled her battered leather suitcase from the back of the closet, she looked around at the life she had curated. The beige curtains Dylan insisted on. The minimalist art he claimed was an investment. It was a cold room. She didn't pack much. She took 3 changes of clothes, the simple, durable fabrics she preferred. She took the photo of her parents, a grainy black and white image of a man and woman standing in front of a blurred garden, and she took the small wooden jewelry box Dylan had mocked downstairs. Inside the box wasn't cheap costume jewelry. Resting on the velvet was a heavy signet ring bearing a crest, a double-headed hawk clutching a sword, and a locket made of old, heavy platinum. She put the locket around her neck, tucking it beneath her sweater. It felt cold against her skin, a reminder of who she was. She left the diamonds Dylan had bought her, the flashy, mass-market engagement ring, the tennis bracelet he'd given her as an apology for missing her birthday. She left them in a neat pile on the pillow. Downstairs, she could hear the front door opening again. A high-pitched, piercing laugh echoed up the stairwell. Camilla. Genevieve closed her suitcase. She took one last look at the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, yes, but the dullness was gone from her eyes. In its place was a spark of something ancient and dangerous. She pulled her hair back, not into the messy bun Dylan liked, because it made her look domestic, but into a tight, severe twist. She carried her suitcase downstairs. Dylan was sitting on the sofa, and Camilla Vane was draped over him like a triumphant flag. Camilla was everything Genevieve wasn't: blonde, tanned, loud, and wearing a red designer dress that cost more than Genevieve's entire wardrobe. When they saw Genevieve, Camilla offered a pouty, faux sympathetic smile. "Oh, you poor thing," Camilla cooed, her voice dripping with condescension. "Dylan told me everything. It must be so hard, having to go back to, well, wherever it is people like you go. Do you have a shelter in mind? Dylan chuckled, nuzzling Camilla's neck. Don't waste your breath, babe. She's got her 10 grand. She's practically a millionaire in her world. Genevieve stopped at the bottom of the stairs. She set the suitcase down. Hello, Camilla, Genevieve said. Camilla looked her up and down, wrinkling her nose. God, Dylan, you weren't kidding. That sweater is hideous. Is it polyester? Wool, Genevieve said simply, from a sheep farm in the Highlands. It's very warm. Fascinating. Camilla rolled her eyes. Look, can you just... Go. I want to measure the windows for the new silk drapes before the light goes. We're getting rid of all this grey. It's so depressing. Genevieve looked at Dylan. Or you didn't tell her about the house, Dylan? Dylan stiffened. Tell her what? That it's mine? That it's a terrifying responsibility to maintain a historic property, Genevieve said, choosing her words carefully. The foundation requires specific care. The humidity controls for the library. Oh, stop trying to sound smart, Dylan interrupted. It's a townhouse, not a museum. Get out. Genevieve picked up her suitcase. She walked to the door, passing within inches of them. She smelled Camilla's perfume, sickly sweet, and Dylan's scotch. I left the keys on the console, Genevieve said. And Dylan? He didn't look up from Camilla's chest. What? The alarm code. You should change it. It's currently my birthday. I know, Dylan sneered. 0601. Easy to remember. The day I got stuck with you. June 1st, Genevieve corrected. Just remember, Dylan, you broke the contract. Not me. She opened the door and stepped out into the pouring London rain. The door slammed shut behind her, the lock clicking instantly. Genevieve stood on the sidewalk. The rain soaked her hair immediately, plastering it to her skull. To anyone watching from the windows of the neighboring townhouses, she looked exactly like what Dylan said she was, a discarded woman with nowhere to go. But Genevieve didn't walk towards the bus stop. She didn't call an Uber. She walked 2 blocks down the street, into the shadows of a small park square. She stood under a gas lamp and reached into her pocket, pulling out a phone. Not the iPhone Dylan paid for, but a small, sleek black device with no brand markings. She dialed a single number. It rang once. Status? A voice answered, deep, older, with a heavy accent that sounded German or perhaps Austrian. It is done, Sebastian, Genevieve said. Her voice had changed completely. The softness was gone. She spoke with the clipped, precise diction of someone used to being obeyed instantly. He has served the papers. The insolence, the voice hissed. Shall I initiate the protocol? Not yet, Genevieve said, watching the rain hit the pavement. Let him have his night. Let him believe he is king of his little castle. Where are you? Turning the corner now, Your Highness. A moment later, the dark, wet street was illuminated by blinding white headlights. A long, black limousine, not a rental, but an armored diplomatic vehicle with flags on the fender, masked by black covers, glided silently to the curb. The driver, a mountain of a man in a dark suit, leaped out, holding a large black umbrella. He didn't just open the door, he bowed. A deep, formal bow, bending at the waist, ignoring the mud splashing his trousers. Ma'am, he murmured. Genevieve handed him her battered suitcase. Careful with that, Thomas. The photo is in there. Of course, ma'am. She slid into the back seat. The interior was warm, smelling of high-quality leather and faint jasmine. Sitting across from her was an older man with silver hair and a perfectly tailored suit. Sebastian, her royal chamberlain. He looked at her wet sweater with open disdain. It pains me to see you in these rags, ma'am. 5 years. 5 years of cosplay. Was it worth it? Genevieve accepted the towel he handed her. She wiped her face, revealing the violet eyes that were now hard as diamonds. I needed to know, Sebastian, she said. I needed to know if a man could love Genevieve Miller. Just Genevieve. Not the title. Not the fortune. Not the burden. And the verdict? Sebastian asked, pouring a glass of vintage cognac from a crystal decanter. Genevieve took the glass. She looked out the tinted window towards the townhouse where Dylan and Camilla were likely toasting their victory. The verdict, she said, taking a sip, is that Genevieve Miller does not exist. She was a ghost, and Dylan Sterling just exorcised her. She leaned back, the shadows of the car swallowing her. Tomorrow, Sebastian, we drop the veil. Contact the press office. Tell them the Duchess of Valoria has returned to London. And tell the legal team to prepare. I want to buy the firm of Sterling, Finch and Associates. I want to buy the building. I want to buy the very ground he walks on. Sebastian smiled, a thin, predatory smile. And the husband? The ex-husband, Genevieve corrected. Let him enjoy his mistress. When I am done with him, she will be the only thing he has left. The limousine pulled away, disappearing into the rainy London night, leaving the poor wife behind and carrying the vengeful Duchess toward her throne. The morning after Genevieve left, the sun did not rise in London, so much as the grey sky simply lightened. In the Kensington townhouse, Dylan Sterling woke up feeling lighter than he had in years. The side of the bed where Genevieve usually lay, stiff, silent, already awake, was empty. Instead, the bathroom door was open, and steam billowed out, carrying the scent of Camilla's papaya body scrub. It was cloying, almost suffocatingly sweet compared to the unscented soap Genevieve had used for her sensitive skin. But to Dylan, it smelled like freedom. He went downstairs to find the kitchen in chaos. Camilla was there, wearing one of his dress shirts and nothing else, poking at a brand-new espresso machine she had ordered overnight. "This thing is broken," she whined, not looking up as he entered. "And where did she keep the stevia? I can't find anything in these cupboards. It's all bran and oats." God, she really lived like a peasant, didn't she? Dylan laughed, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Throw it all out. I told you we start fresh." "I already called the movers," Camilla said, leaning back into him. "They're taking her furniture to the dump. And Dylan, I found a box of old books in the study. Latin poetry or something. Dusty and boring. I told them to trash those too." Dylan felt a tiny, microscopic prick of hesitation. Genevieve had loved those books. She would sit for hours reading them, claiming she was learning the language. He had always mocked her for it, a waitress trying to be a scholar. "Trash them," Dylan said, burying the memory. "I don't want a single trace of her left." He left for work an hour later, striding into the glass and steel tower of Sterling, Finch and Associates like he owned the place. He was the firm's golden boy. He had brought in the Vane account, thanks to Camilla, and now that he had shed the dead weight of his charity case wife, he was untouchable. But as he walked the corridors, the atmosphere felt off. Usually the junior associates would nod respectfully or look away in fear. Today they were huddled in clusters, whispering. When he passed, they went silent, their eyes darting to him and then quickly away. It wasn't the silence of respect. It was the silence of people watching a car crash in slow motion. He reached his corner office. His secretary, a usually unflappable woman named Mrs. Higgins, looked pale. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Finch wants to see you, immediately, in the boardroom." "Finch?" Dylan frowned. The senior managing partner rarely came down from the executive floor. "Is it about the Vane merger?" "He didn't say, sir. But the board is there too." Dylan straightened his tie. The board. They were probably going to announce his promotion to name partner early. That had to be it. He had finalized his divorce. He was marrying into the Vane family. He was the perfect corporate asset. He walked into the boardroom with a confident smile. 12 people sat around the long oak table. None of them smiled back. At the head of the table sat Archibald Finch, a man who looked like a bulldog chewing a wasp. But it was the empty chair at the opposite end of the table that caught Dylan's eye. It was the chair reserved for the majority shareholder, a position that had been held by a silent holding company in Zurich for decades. "Sit down, Dylan," Finch said, his voice grave. "Is something wrong, Archie?" Dylan asked, taking a seat and feigning a relaxed posture. "If this is about the divorce, it's handled. Clean break. She's gone." "This isn't about your personal life, Dylan." "Well, not directly," Finch said, shuffling a stack of documents. "At 8 a.m. this morning, the Zurich holding company sold their controlling interest in this firm." Dylan blinked. "Sold? To whom?" "That's 40% of the firm." 51%, Finch corrected. "They bought up the outstanding shares from the minor partners overnight. We have a new owner, Dylan, a sole proprietor." "Who?" Dylan demanded, his mind racing. Was it a rival firm? An American conglomerate? "A private equity trust based in Luxembourg," Finch said. "The Valoria Sovereign Fund." Dylan frowned. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like something from a history book, but he couldn't place it. "Never heard of them. What does this mean for us?" "For me?" Finch looked at Dylan with a mixture of pity and confusion. "The new owner has requested a full audit of the firm's personnel. Specifically, the partners. Specifically, you." "Me?" Dylan stood up, outraged. "I'm your top earner. I just secured the Vane account." "Sit down," Finch snapped. "You don't understand. This isn't a performance review. The new owner has frozen all partner bonuses effective immediately. They are restructuring, and they have called a mandatory gala for tomorrow night at the Royal Albert Hall to introduce the new direction of the firm. Attendance is mandatory." Dylan sank back into his chair. A mandatory gala. A freeze on bonuses. This was a power play. "Do we know who the representative is?" Dylan asked. Finch slid a piece of heavy, cream-colored paper across the table. "We received this memo." Dylan picked it up. The paper was textured, expensive. At the top was an embossed crest, a double-headed hawk, clutching a sword. Dylan stared at the crest. A cold shiver ran down his spine. He had seen that bird before. Where? The ring? Genevieve's cheap, clunky ring in her wooden jewelry box. No, Dylan thought, shaking his head physically. Impossible. It's a coincidence. A generic heraldic symbol. Lots of crests have birds. "The representative is the Duchess of Valoria," Finch said. "She is notoriously private. No photos exist of her in the press for the last 5 years. She's been away." Dylan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. A duchess, real royalty. Not his waitress ex-wife. "Fine," Dylan said, regaining his composure. "So we have a royal owner. That's good for prestige. I'll charm her at the gala. I'm good with old money." Finch looked at him strangely. "Dylan, the memo had one specific addendum regarding you." "Oh?" "It says, ensure Mr. Sterling brings his guest. We would not want him to face the future alone." Dylan smirked. "See? They know who the star is. They want to meet Camilla." He stood up, buttoning his jacket. He felt the thrill of the hunt returning. He wasn't just a lawyer anymore. He was about to be the right-hand man to a duchess. He had no idea that across the city, in the royal suite of the Claridge's Hotel, his poor wife was standing before a floor-to-length mirror, while 3 seamstresses pinned a gown of midnight blue velvet around her body. Genevieve looked at her reflection. The violet eyes were the same, but the posture was different. The slouch of the submissive housewife was gone. Her neck was long, her chin high. Sebastian stood behind her, holding a velvet cushion. On it lay a necklace of diamonds and sapphires, so heavy it looked like armor. The Valoria choker. "The press release is ready, Your Highness," Sebastian said softly. "It goes out tomorrow at 6 p.m., just as the gala doors open." "And the name?" Genevieve asked, touching the cold stones of the necklace. "Genevieve Alexandra Beatrice, Grand Duchess of Valoria, Countess of Trentham, and Lady of the High Reach." Genevieve nodded. "And Dylan?" "He believes he is being honored." "Good," Genevieve whispered, her eyes darkening. "Let him climb as high as he can." The fall is longer that way. The Royal Albert Hall was glowing. Searchlights swept the London sky, and a red carpet the width of a highway stretched up the stairs. It was the social event of the season, hastily arranged but impeccably executed by a mysterious new benefactor. Dylan Sterling stepped out of the limousine, Camilla Vane on his arm. Camilla had outdone herself, or so she thought. She was wearing a dress of bright, screaming, neon pink tulle that took up immense amounts of space. It was trendy, loud, and expensive. She had demanded Dylan buy her a diamond necklace that morning, maxing out his credit card, which he assumed his upcoming bonus would cover. "Look at the cameras, Dylan!" Camilla squealed, waving at the paparazzi who were shouting names. "They love us!" Dylan smiled his shark smile. He looked dashing in his bespoke tuxedo. He felt like the king of London. He spotted Nigel Thorne, his rival at the firm, standing near the entrance looking nervous. Dylan steered Camilla over to him. "Nigel," Dylan nodded condescendingly. "Sweating a bit? Worried the new owner might trim the fat?" Nigel didn't rise to the bait. He looked at Dylan with wide eyes. "You didn't hear? You haven't checked the news." "I've been busy getting ready," Dylan scoffed. "Why? What's happening?" Before Nigel could answer, a hush fell over the red carpet. It wasn't the usual lull. It was a vacuum of sound. The shouting paparazzi stopped. The clicking shutters paused, then erupted into a frenzy that sounded like machine gun fire. A convoy of 4 black Range Rovers with diplomatic flags pulled up to the curb. Security guards in earpieces swarmed the area, pushing the other guests, including Dylan and Camilla, back behind the velvet ropes. "Hey!" Camilla shouted. "Watch the dress! Do you know who my father is?" A guard ignored her, turning his broad back to push her further away. The door of the lead vehicle opened. First, Sebastian stepped out, dressed in full formal tails with a sash of green and gold across his chest. He turned and offered a hand to the interior. A woman stepped out. She was wearing midnight blue velvet, a gown that hugged her frame and cascaded into a train that seemed to absorb the light. On her neck was the sapphire choker, gleaming with a brilliance that made Camilla's new diamonds look like glass. Her hair was swept up in an intricate, regal style, topped with a small, tasteful, but unmistakably royal tiara. Dylan squinted. The woman was turned away from him, waving graciously to the crowd. There was something about the curve of her neck, the way she held her shoulders. "Who is that?" Camilla asked, jealous. "She looks like she's going to a costume party." The woman turned. She looked directly at the camera bank, her face projected onto the massive screens flanking the entrance of the hall. Dylan's heart stopped. The world tilted on its axis. The noise of the crowd faded into a high-pitched ring in his ears. It was Genevieve, but it wasn't his Genevieve. This wasn't the woman who scrubbed his floors in jeans and a cardigan. This woman was terrifying. Her face was porcelain perfection, her makeup emphasizing those striking violet eyes. She looked 10 feet tall. She looked like a statue of a goddess brought to life to judge the wicked. That looks like your ex," Camilla said, her voice trembling with confusion. "Dylan, why does that woman look like your housekeeper?" Dylan couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Genevieve began to walk up the red carpet. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. As she passed, seasoned lawyers and billionaires bowed their heads. She approached the spot where Dylan and Camilla were standing. Dylan was paralyzed. He wanted to run, but his feet were lead. He wanted to shout, "Jen!" but his throat was dry. Genevieve stopped. She was 5 feet away. She turned her head slowly, her eyes locking onto Dylan's. There was no love in those eyes, no anger, just a profound, crushing indifference. It was the way a human looks at an insect. She didn't speak to him. She didn't acknowledge his existence. She simply let her gaze slide over him, then over Camilla's neon pink dress, and then she turned back to Sebastian. "Shall we?" she said. Her voice was amplified by the nearby microphones. It was the same voice that had said "Happy Anniversary" 2 nights ago. but now it carried the weight of centuries of command. "Yes, Your Grace," Sebastian said loudly. They walked past. Dylan stood frozen as the realization hit him like a physical blow. The poor orphan. The woman with no family. The silence. The strange, elegant handwriting. The experiment. "Be very careful what you wish for, Dylan. The world is full of things that shine, but very few of them are gold." Her words echoed in his skull. Inside the hall, the guests were seated. Dylan and Camilla were ushered to a table, not at the front, where the partners usually sat, but in the back, near the kitchen doors. "This is a mistake," Dylan hissed, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm a senior partner." "Dylan, I'm scared," Camilla whispered. She was no longer loud. She had seen the way the crowd looked at Genevieve. She knew instinctually that she was outmatched in a way money couldn't fix. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the center stage. Archibald Finch walked to the podium. He looked terrified. "Ladies and gentlemen," Finch stammered, "it is my distinct honor, my terrified privilege, to introduce the new owner of Sterling, Finch and Associates, the head of the House of Valoria, Her Royal Highness, the Grand Duchess Genevieve." The room erupted in applause. Genevieve walked onto the stage. She stood at the podium, looking out over the sea of faces. She found Dylan's table in the back immediately, as if she had a radar for him. "Thank you," she said. The room went dead silent. "For 5 years, I have lived among you in anonymity. I wanted to understand the legal system of this country from the ground up. I wanted to see how justice is administered and how it is manipulated." She paused. "I learned that in this city, value is often determined by appearance, by the cut of a suit, by the price of a car." She leaned into the microphone. "I have decided to restructure this firm. We will no longer prioritize profit over ethics, and effective immediately. We will be auditing every case handled by the senior partners in the last 5 years, to ensure integrity." A murmur went through the crowd. Dylan felt bile rise in his throat. An audit. She was going to go through his files. She knew where the bodies were buried because she had lived in the house where he discussed them on the phone. Genevieve smiled, a cold, dazzling smile. "Enjoy your dinner," she said. "Some of you. It may be your last on the company expense account." She walked off stage. Dylan slumped in his chair. Camilla was furiously texting on her phone, probably checking if her father's company was implicated in Dylan's deals. Dylan looked at his hand. He was still wearing his wedding band on his right hand, having moved it there to transition. He tried to pull it off, but his fingers were swollen with panic. He had divorced a queen, and now he was living in her kingdom. The following Monday at Sterling, Finch and Associates, now a subsidiary of Valoria Holdings, was not business as usual. It was an autopsy. Dylan Sterling arrived at the building at 8 a.m., his usual time. He swiped his security badge at the turnstile. It beeped red. Access denied. He tried again, a sheen of cold sweat instantly forming on his upper lip. A line of junior associates was forming behind him. He could feel their eyes burning into the back of his neck, a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. "Mr. Sterling?" Dylan turned. Standing there was not the usual friendly security guard, old Jerry, who used to joke about the weather. Instead, 2 men in dark grey tactical suits stood with their hands clasped behind their backs. They wore the double-headed hawk pin on their lapels. "There is a technical error," Dylan said, trying to project authority, though his voice cracked. "My pass isn't working." "It is not an error, sir," the taller guard said. His voice was devoid of emotion. "Your clearance has been revoked. You have been reassigned." "Reassigned? I'm a senior partner." "You were a senior partner," the guard corrected. "Please follow us. If you resist, we will escort you forcibly. There are cameras everywhere." Dylan looked up. The lobby, usually a cavern of anonymity, suddenly felt like a stage. He saw the cameras, sleek, black domes, and felt a phantom gaze. She was watching. He knew it. He followed the guards. They didn't lead him to the elevators that rose to the executive suites on the 40th floor. They marched him past the reception desk, down a service corridor and into the freight elevator. The doors rumbled shut. The car descended. "Where are you taking me?" Dylan demanded. The doors opened onto the basement level, the archives. It was a windowless, fluorescent-lit purgatory, where interns usually spent their summers scanning documents. The air smelled of ozone and dust. In the center of the room, a single metal desk had been set up. On it sat a computer from a decade ago and a stack of physical files, tower high. "This is your new workspace," the guard said. "You are to review the archives of the Vane account for compliance discrepancies. You are not to leave this floor without an escort. Your phone has been jammed. Your internet access is restricted to the internal database." "This is illegal," Dylan hissed. "Constructive dismissal. I'll sue." "Read your contract, Mr. Sterling," the guard said, stepping back into the elevator. "Clause 14, B. In the event of an ownership change, partners may be reassigned to audit duties pending conduct review. You wrote that clause yourself 3 years ago to punish a junior partner you didn't like. Irony is a cruel mistress, isn't it?" The doors closed, leaving Dylan alone in the silence. For 3 days, Dylan sat in the basement. It was psychological torture. He had no signal, no news from the outside world, just the hum of the ventilation and the dusty files of his own past cases. But the real torture came on Thursday. The door to the basement opened. Dylan shot up, hoping it was over. A woman walked in. She was sharp, angular, wearing a suit that cost more than Dylan's car. She had short, severe grey hair and carried a slim tablet. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. She radiated the energy of an executioner. She pulled a chair opposite Dylan's metal desk and sat down. "Mr. Sterling," she said. Her accent was European, clipped and precise. "My name is Director Kovich. I am the head of forensic accounting for Her Highness. I have done nothing wrong," Dylan said automatically. "My billables are impeccable." "We are not talking about billables," Kovich said. She tapped her tablet. A recording started playing. It was audio, grainy but clear. "Don't worry about the taxes, Camilla. I'll route the bonus through the offshore shell in Jersey. Jen never looks at the bank statements. She thinks we're saving for a vacation." Dylan's blood froze. That conversation. He remembered it. He had taken that call in his study at home, 2 years ago. The door was closed. "How?" Dylan whispered. "Did you bug the house?" "We didn't need to," Kovich said calmly. "You were shouting. Her Highness was in the hallway, dusting the baseboards. She has an excellent memory. She wrote down the date, the time, and the phrase Jersey Shell. We simply pulled the corresponding bank records." Kovich swiped the screen. Another document appeared. "And this," Kovich continued, "the consulting fees charged to the Vane Corporation. £50,000 a month, paid to a company called Sterling Solutions." "That's legitimate consulting," Dylan cried, sweat dripping down his temples. "The registered address for Sterling Solutions is a P.O. box in Leeds," Kovich noted. "And the only employee is your mistress, Miss Camilla Vane, who, according to our background check, has no degree and lists her occupation as influencer. You were siphoning client money to pay for her lifestyle while your wife was wearing shoes with holes in the soles." Kovich leaned forward, the predator closing in. "We have it all, Dylan. The insider trading on the TechCore merger. Genevieve heard you bragging about it while she was ironing your shirts. The bribe to the zoning commissioner. She found the receipt in your pockets before she did the laundry. You treated her like furniture. You forgot that furniture is in the room when you speak." Dylan slumped back in his chair. He felt sick. He had constructed his life on the arrogance that Genevieve was stupid, that she was passive. He realized now that her silence wasn't submission. It was gathering evidence. "What does she want?" Dylan croaked. "Does she want me to go to jail?" Kovich stood up, tucking the tablet under her arm. She looked at him with a chilling smile. "Jail? Oh, eventually, perhaps. But Her Highness is a merciful woman. She doesn't want to destroy you, Dylan. She wants you to destroy yourself." Kovich walked to the door. "The audit is public, by the way. The Financial Times ran the story this morning. Sterling Ethics questioned. I imagine your phone, if you had one, would be ringing off the hook, specifically from Mr. Vane." She left him in the basement. Dylan stared at the wall. The silence of the room was suddenly deafening. He wasn't just fired. He was radioactive. When Dylan finally emerged from the building at 7 p.m., his access badge confiscated by security, he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 10 hours. He hailed a taxi. His company car had been towed. His driver was gone. He arrived at the Kensington townhouse, the house he had fought so hard to kick Genevieve out of. It was raining again, a grim echo of the night she left. But this time there was no dignity in the rain. He unlocked the door. The house was quiet. Too quiet. "Camilla," he called out. He walked into the living room. The chaos of boxes from the other day was gone, but so were the decorative vases. So was the expensive rug. He ran up the stairs, his heart hammering against his ribs. In the master bedroom, the scene was carnage. The closet doors were flung open. Hangers littered the floor. The jewelry box, the new one he had bought Camilla to replace Genevieve's wooden one, was empty. Camilla was there, trying to zip a massive Louis Vuitton suitcase. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, even though it was night inside the house. "What are you doing?" Dylan asked, breathless. Camilla jumped. She whipped around, her face a mask of panic and fury. "Oh, you liar!" she screamed. She didn't sound like the cooing, seductive mistress anymore. She sounded like a cornered animal. "You told me you were the star. You told me you owned the firm." I am a star," Dylan stammered. "It's just a management shake-up. I can fix it." "Fix it?" Camilla laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Daddy called me, Dylan. He saw the news. He saw the audit report. Do you know what he said? He said you're a liability. He said you're radioactive." She yanked the zipper shut on her bag. "He's pulling the account, Dylan. Vane Industries is leaving the firm. Daddy is meeting with the Duchess's representatives tomorrow to distance himself from your malpractice. He's going to sue you to save his own reputation." Dylan felt the room spin. "Camilla, wait. We love each other. We can get through this. I still have the house. I still have savings." "Savings?" Camilla scoffed. "I tried to use the credit card an hour ago at Harrods. Declined. Frozen. And this house? Daddy had his lawyers check the deed. The mortgage is in your name. But the down payment? The equity? It's tied to a spousal trust that you apparently forgot about. If Genevieve sues, she gets the house." She grabbed the handle of her suitcase. "I'm not going to be poor, Dylan. I don't do poor. That was your ex-wife's job. Camilla, please," Dylan begged, stepping in front of her. He reached out to grab her arm. "I did this for you. I left her for you." Camilla shoved him. It wasn't a playful push. It was a hard, disgusted shove. Dylan stumbled back, tripping over a discarded hanger, and fell onto the bed he had shared with Genevieve for 5 years. "You left her because you're a narcissist," Camilla spat, looking down at him. "And you picked me because you thought I was a trophy. Well, guess what, Dylan? Trophies go to the winners, and you look like a loser." She dragged her suitcase to the door. She didn't look back. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked out. Dylan lay on the bed. He heard the bump, bump, bump of the suitcase going down the stairs. He heard the front door open and slam shut. He was alone. He looked around the room. It was stripped bare. Camilla had taken everything of value, the silver brushes, the portable speaker, even the silk sheets, leaving the mattress exposed. But on the nightstand, there was one thing left, a small white envelope. It wasn't from Camilla. The paper was too high quality. Dylan sat up, his hands shaking. He reached for it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the letterhead of the Royal High Court of Valoria. It was a legal summons. Plaintiff, Her Royal Highness, the Grand Duchess Genevieve, defendant, Dylan James Sterling. Charges, fraud, embezzlement, perjury, and breach of marital contract. But it was the handwritten note at the bottom, in that elegant, flowing script that stopped his heart. Dylan, you once told me that I was background noise. I thought you should know. The background is where the structure holds the weight. When you remove the background, the picture collapses. I have frozen your accounts. I have seized your assets pending the investigation. But I am not cruel. I have left you one account active. It contains £10,000, and you have 1 month to vacate the premises. Happy anniversary. Jen. Dylan dropped the letter. He stared at the empty room. The rain lashed against the window, sounding like applause. He realized then that he hadn't just lost a wife. He hadn't just lost a job. He had been playing a game of chess against a grandmaster for 5 years, and he hadn't even realized the board was set up. He put his head in his hands, and for the first time since he was a child, Dylan Sterling began to weep. Not for his wife, but for the terrifying realization that he was exactly what he had accused her of being, a charity case. The 30th day arrived with a cold, iron-grey dawn. November in London was unforgiving, stripping the trees of their leaves just as Dylan Sterling had been stripped of his pride. The Kensington townhouse echoed. It was completely empty now. The movers, hired by the Valoria Trust, had come 2 days ago to catalogue and remove the furniture that belonged to the estate. Dylan had watched them take the Italian leather sofa, the mahogany dining table, and the artwork. They handled the items with more respect than Dylan had ever shown his wife. Dylan stood in the hallway with a single gym bag. It was all he had. His designer suits had been sold to pay off immediate debts that the frozen accounts couldn't cover. He was wearing jeans and a sweater that had shrunk in the wash because he didn't know how to separate his laundry. He looked at the small envelope on the console table. Inside was a cashier's cheque for £10,000. He picked it up. The paper felt heavy, like a tombstone. £10,000. The exact price he had put on 5 years of marriage. The winning lottery ticket, he had called it. Now, it was his only lifeline to keep him off the streets until he could find a job. Any job that would hire a disbarred lawyer with a reputation for fraud. The doorbell rang. Dylan flinched. He wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door. Sebastian stood there. The royal chamberlain was impeccable in a charcoal wool coat, holding a black umbrella against the drizzle. "Mr. Sterling," Sebastian said, his voice devoid of warmth, "the deadline has passed. The locks are to be changed at noon. Is the property vacated?" "I'm leaving," Dylan said, his voice raspy. He hadn't spoken to anyone in days. I wanted to know. Is she here?" Sebastian stared at him for a long moment, his eyes assessing the fallen man. "Her Highness is in the car. She wishes to inspect the property before the renovation begins." "Renovation?" Dylan asked weakly. "She is turning the townhouse into a shelter for women displaced by domestic financial abuse," Sebastian said, a faint, razor-sharp smile touching his lips. "She feels the house has bad memories that need to be cleansed." Dylan felt the blood drain from his face. He stepped out onto the porch. The black limousine was there. The back window rolled down halfway. Genevieve sat inside. She wasn't looking at her phone or reading documents. She was looking at him. She wore a high-collared coat of cream cashmere and simple pearl earrings. She looked serene, untouched by the wreckage of his life. Dylan walked down the steps, ignoring the rain. He stopped a few feet from the car. He wanted to scream, to beg, to yell that it wasn't fair. But looking at her, he realized the terrifying truth. It was perfectly fair. "Jen," he whispered. "Genevieve," she corrected softly. The name sounded like a judgment. "Why didn't you tell me?" Dylan asked, his voice breaking. If I had known who you were." "That is exactly why I didn't," Genevieve said. Her eyes were sad, but clear. I gave you 5 years, Dylan. 5 years to love the woman, not the title. 5 years to show kindness to a waiter, to a clerk, to a wife who you thought had nothing to offer you but loyalty. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze piercing him. You fell in love with a reflection, Dylan. You loved how I made you look. You loved having a servant. And when you thought you found a shinier ornament in Camilla, you threw me away. I'm sorry, Dylan choked out. I've lost everything. My career, my reputation. Camilla is gone. I have nothing. Genevieve glanced at the gym bag in his hand. You have £10,000, she said, and you have your freedom. That is more than most people start with. That is more than I had when my parents died. She pressed a button, and the window began to roll up. Wait, Dylan stepped forward. What happens to me now? The window stopped an inch from the top. Genevieve's voice came through the glass, muffled, but audible. That, Dylan, is finally up to you. You wanted to be a self-made man. Now is your chance to actually make yourself. The window closed. The engine purred to life. Dylan stood on the curb as the limousine pulled away, splashing dirty water onto his shoes. He watched the red taillights disappear into the London fog. He looked down at the check in his hand. Then he looked back at the house that was now a shelter for victims of men like him. He turned and began to walk towards the subway station. He walked with his head down, blending into the crowd, just another grey figure in the rain. Background noise. For the first time in his life, Dylan Sterling was invisible, and he knew, with a crushing certainty, that he would never be seen again. And that is the story of Dylan Sterling, a man who held a diamond in his hand and mistook it for glass. He spent his life chasing status, never realizing that true nobility has nothing to do with titles and everything to do with character. Dylan thought he was the main character of his world, only to find out he was the villain in someone else's story. It's a harsh reminder that how we treat those we think can do nothing for us is the only true measure of who we are. Genevieve didn't destroy Dylan. She simply held up a mirror, and he couldn't survive what he saw. What do you think? Was Genevieve's punishment too harsh, or did Dylan get exactly what he deserved? I want to hear your verdict in the comments below. Team Genevieve or Team Mercy? If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want more stories about karma, revenge, and secrets revealed, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful who you step on today. They might be the one running the world tomorrow.